Welcome to Label Alert Extra and the 6th installment, Scoping Resources and Costs. Before we begin, we'd like to thank our sponsor, SGS Co., whose generous support makes this series possible. Since last month, there have been a couple of developments that we'd like to tell you about. At the beginning of October, the FDA issued a new proposed rule to extend the compliance dates from July 26, 2018 to January 1, 2020. This new date is for manufacturers with 10 million or more in annual food sales. Manufacturers with less than $10 million would receive an extra year to comply until January 1, 2021. The FDA has said that until this proposed rule is final, they intend to exercise enforcement discretion with respect to the old compliance dates. The USDA, whose parallel rule has not yet been finalized, is allowing companies to use the new FDA format if they wish, but note that they must use the old USDA rack tables. Furthermore, if you decide to use the new FDA format on USDA labels, you must get at least one panel of each type approved by the USDA labeling team in Washington, D.C. Just note, this is a complex decision. Be sure you get advice. We at Prime Label would be happy to help. In order to scope resources needed and costs, we need to identify the workflow to produce a final label. First, we must get the new data that the new rule requires. The new vitamins, potassium and vitamin D, and the amounts of these vitamins. These amounts can come from a lab, but wait, there are other nutrient levels that can only come from suppliers. These are added sugars, dietary fiber, folate, and vitamin E. And as long as you're going to a supplier for that data, you might as well collect the other vitamin data from them as well. The complication here is that getting these data sources can be time-consuming, and suppliers are frequently the bottleneck to having all of the data needed to create the new NFP. The next step is converting the data into panel-ready numbers. Many manufacturers use a regulatory nutritionist for this service. An added complication at this step, though, is that these folks need to add dual-column calculations to their list of to-dos. The panel format can no longer be determined by label graphics professionals. Which brings us to our next step. Once your designers have placed the new panel, they may have to do some rearranging of design or add copy if the new panel is larger than expected. They may also need to tweak front-of-pack nutrition keys or nutrient content claims, which may have been changed because of the new numbers on the panel. This is really important. There was a recent lawsuit filed against Starburst for front-of-pack nutrition not syncing with the panel data on the back. Once the designers are done with your label, it has to go through an artwork review. This is the step that may become the next bottleneck, as your regulatory team may be doing double duty analyzing nutrients in Step 2, as well as reviewing artwork in Step 4. Finally, the approved artwork will be printed onto a label, and you're done. Note, however, that this is just the workflow to convert an old panel into a new one. If the product identity has been compromised by new ugly numbers or lost claims, you may decide that additional work is in order to resize, repackage, or reformulate your product. So in addition to the steps above, there are additional costs in R&D, design, and operations. Also, this workflow does not include the steps necessary to update your data infrastructure, which will be critical to fulfill the new record-keeping requirements of the FDA. The next task is to scope the workload and identify what resources are available. To get the data, you'll need to audit your ingredient records, identify missing information, coordinate with suppliers to get this data, and enter additional information into your record-keeping systems. Don't underestimate the time needed to coordinate with suppliers. We're finding this to be the biggest bottleneck to completing the new nutrition facts panel. Note that while this first step is only mandatory for missing data, it's also a good opportunity to review or replace old information as well. And if the item is to be resized, repackaged, or reformulated, then all data must be collected from scratch. Once you've collected and updated all your ingredient and product information, the rest of the steps must be completed for every product SKU. And of course, don't forget to keep your database administrator in the loop. Now that you know what tasks need to be accomplished, you can ballpark the time required per product and get a total estimated time to complete the work. This will give you a sense of whether you can accomplish these tasks with just in-house resources, or whether you need to outsource some of your tasks. Remember to factor in the regular job of your in-house team when assessing whether there is extra time to handle this workload bubble. And don't forget, when estimating time, to consider extra coordination handoffs between the different companies in the supply chain. Another thing to consider is that while right now supplier data is the bottleneck in the supply chain, as volume ramps up, we anticipate that next year we'll see a dearth of specialty resources. The truth of the matter is that there are only so many skilled providers in the supply chain, so it would be wise to lock them up early. And as we get closer to the compliance date, it's almost a certainty that printers and packaging will be in short supply, so be sure to budget for surge pricing. Now that you know your costs to replace and relabel for the new NFP, you can also factor in any resizing, repackaging, and reformulating that needs to be done. Multiply these per SKU costs with the number of products to get the total expense for each transition type. Add your infrastructure costs, and you get a big picture of the budget needed to carry out this transition. Finally, you can allocate costs across the 2 years left before all labels need to be converted, and you have your budget ready for management's approval. Just remember, if this seems like an overwhelming task, you're not alone. Prime Label and SGS Co. have nutrition label reform services to help you educate, plan, and execute your NFP transition. We provide product analyses and jumpstart services to help you be more efficient. And of course, you can outsource the entire project to us as well. So we hope that you found this 6th installment of Label Alert Extra useful, and plan to join us next time for our final newsletter, Step 7, Execute Final Plan. Thanks so much for your time. Prime Label has been planning for and assisting customers with nutrition label reform since 2014. We have a great deal of experience, along with our partner SGS Co., in how food companies are handling this generational transition. Please connect with us on our websites or at labels@primelabel.com for more information. Now go out and have a great day.